that you need us to answer. Okay, I'm going ahead and recording this session for us. So we do have a lot of material that we're going to address. We actually had about 10 questions, 9 to 10 questions that came in today or throughout the week that I'm going to answer. I did have a handful of questions that came in about 15 minutes before the workshop. Unfortunately, we weren't able to include those on the slide. So if it's not covered in the actual program, definitely ask the question at the end of the session, or we can make time to answer that on September the 8th. Okay, about me, I'm Bridget Baggett. Again, this is just one of a few things that we offer to job seekers. In addition to our Q&A sessions, we do offer resume writing and edits, market research. For employers, we do offer compensation benchmarking, referral, and retention and workshop. But at the end of the day, we're an executive search firm. And the reason why we decided to do Q&A sessions is because we get multiple resumes every week from candidates that unfortunately we can't place, or we may not have an opening, or their skill set doesn't match with what our client's looking for. So we still wanted to offer some type of outlet or some type of platform where we can still help those job seekers that are facing challenges as they're out there looking for work. So this is something that we do offer, again, every single Monday from 7 to 8. Today's quote, and this is usually our theme that we work around, today's quote is, when attempting to reach a higher altitude, you will experience turbulence. And that's why our theme is kind of like the airport, flying, buying airline tickets, traveling, because this is something that I do want people to realize when they are trying to reach a higher altitude, whether personally, professionally, you are going to experience some turbulence. You are going to experience some pushback. And this is the same thing when you board a plane. The first thing they ask you to do is fasten your safety belt, because you will experience turbulence as you make that climb to the altitude that's going to be comfortable for them to fly that entire trip. And that's no different from you trying to reach a different level in your career. So let's take a look at the questions. I know as you look at these, your eyes may glaze over because there are a lot. Many of these questions will actually be combined in a particular slide, because some of them I can touch on in just one slide. I did split them up so I can acknowledge that I did receive the question. Just a quick note, one of the questions as we go through them is, what are some tips to get interviews? What are some tips to find temporary work as you're doing a more involved job search? Another career change, where do you look if you do not have experience in the field that you're interested in? Are there other factors that come into play in hiring someone besides having a solution-oriented resume, in addition to acing the interview, assuming that you follow up afterwards? Do employers provide a learning curve for new hires regardless of what skill set they possess for the job? If so, what's the time frame? Do you have to be prompt in replicating your 3, 6, 9-month plan into your new job in order to demonstrate or showcase your capability to bring value to the new company? What if some reasons you cannot add immediate value to the company through your 3, 6, 9-month plan? Do you think this will lead to early termination? How do employers assess your work ethic to ensure that you'll be a valuable asset or provide a strong return on their investment after they have hired you? And how long from the first day of your exposure to the job does it take to get that assessment? How to advance your career within your company. Is it more convenient to change your career goals for a job in a more demand industry? And the last question is, at a career fair, what do recruiters do with the hundreds of resumes they receive? Do they look at them all? Do they call people based on that for an interview? Okay, so these are some of the questions that we're actually going to touch on tonight. And as I touch on them again, I will repeat the question briefly and give you insight into the answer. Okay, the first two questions I'm going to cover in this slide, and actually it's going to bleed over into the second slide, would be, what are some tips for getting interviews? What are some tips for finding temporary work as you're doing a more involved job search? And the other question I'm going to touch on is the career change. Where do you look if you do not have experience in the field that you're interested in? Okay, first thing I want to talk about is your destination. If you're looking for temporary work, full-time employment, or even if you're currently gainfully employed and you're looking for a career change, you want to know your destination. For temporary work, say that you're looking to do something while you're looking for full-time employment. Depending on your background, you could do temp jobs, temp positions through a temp agency, which will put you out on assignments. Some assignments may last 2 weeks, up to 3 or 4 months, up to 6 to 12 months, depending on the assignment. Also, if you're interested, if you have a bachelor's degree, in some cases an associate's of work, if you're in some particular type of trade, you can do substitute teaching. If you have a higher level or graduate degree, you can be an adjunct instructor. So these are some things that you should consider that you can do as temporarily to supplement your income while you are looking for work. Strongly suggest that you look at local or national temp agencies that do temp to perm placement that actually get you in the job for a particular assignment, and that's something that you can do while, again, you are looking for permanent employment. But the first thing you want to do is know your destination. Where do you want to go? And this is the same thing, and it goes back to our theme, and if you're catching a flight somewhere, or if you're a pilot, you have to know where you're going to go. And at the end of the day, you're going to have some type of plan in place on how you're going to get there. And me working with different type of job seekers with various backgrounds, I can see that a lot of people aren't putting effort into marketing themselves. You want to find ways to think outside the box. What are you going to do other than apply to jobs online? And that seems like that's the only line of defense. I would say the first line of defense, but in some cases, if not all, that's the only line of defense that job seekers are using. So what are you going to put in place to market yourself outside the job boards? That's something that's very crucial. The next thing you want to look at, make sure that you're solution focused. Whether you're looking for temporary work, full-time employment, even if you're doing a career change, how are you going to bring value to the organization, and what problem are you going to solve? And that's something that's crucial in the hiring component, because employers are looking for people that are going to be able to solve a problem that they're having. It's a reason why they have a job opening. It's a reason why they're trying to get someone into their organization. They have a problem. And you need to be able to tailor your resume, your cover letter, and any other type of marketing material that's going to solve that problem. Other than just talking about me, as the job seeker, everyone that lines up or competes with you for this job are going to have similar backgrounds, especially if the requirements are very strenuous and they're looking for someone that must have this and must have that. The people that you're competing with are going to have those qualifications. So what's going to set you apart from them? This is something that you need to focus on. How are you going to be a solution? The next thing, you want to take action. Again, besides sitting, applying online, what type of action can you take while you're waiting? Sometimes job seeking or searching for a job can be a waiting game. You're waiting for that interview, you're waiting for feedback, you're waiting for a status update. Outside of waiting, what action can you be taking? Can you be reaching out to people in that particular industry? Can you be following up? Can you start joining organizations that's tailored around that particular industry? That's what I mean by take action. Rather than just sitting by the phone, counting how many resumes or how many applications that you submitted, what are you doing outside of that that's going to yield some type of result? And that really boils down to taking some actual action in what you're doing. And finally, you want to be flexible. Your next career move that you make, whether it's a temp position, and that's why I even named some things as far as substitute teaching, adjunct instructor, if you have a master's degree or higher, be flexible. Your next career move may not be your dream job. It may be a way to get yourself in the door. So you want to be flexible with that as well. I know a lot of people that are making career changes and looking for a field, and this is one thing that I'm going to cover in the next slide, that they may not have experience in, and they think they're going to walk in, on the same level they left their previous employment, and that's just an unrealistic go. You know, if you don't have experience in a particular field or your experience is very limited, you have to also be flexible with the position that you take. You know, it may be a pay cut that you have to take. That's something that you're going to have to explore. So these are the things I think are very pertinent in your career search, is first finding your destination. You know, and I know how I want to say how straight to the point, or how cliche this may sound, because you know, you're kind of saying, well, I know what I'm applying to, I know what I want to do, you know, and you'll be surprised. I've talked to job seekers that have no idea what they want to apply to, or they're giving me a roundabout what they can do. Well, I've done this before, you know, I know how to do this, I've done that, and they're kind of applying to everything out there that kind of fits what they kind of do, you know, and they really don't have a strict or set destination or a strategic plan in place that they're following. It's kind of, you know, I'm applying to things as it comes. So you definitely want to make sure that you have that down. Once you know what you want to do, everything else falls in place. You really can't market something that you don't know what you're going to market or how you're going to market it unless you do have that destination in place. So that's for this one, take off, career change, and job search. The next one is limited experience. What is your plan to gain experience? This again goes back to the career change. Where do I look if I have limited experience in the field that you're interested in? You first want to do your research on the industry that you're looking to get in. You want to find a way to network with people in that industry. And this question did not state what industry they were leaving from to actually enter. So I don't know if it's an industry that transferable skills will be relevant or not, you know, but just to put that out there, if you're transferring or trying to transition into a career that's similar to the one that you're actually in, you may want to heavily rely on your transferable skills, you know. But if you're entering a career, or you're trying to aim for a position that you have no type of experience in, that doesn't relate to your current position, you're going to have to network and also be open to entry-level positions. You also want to look at industry-specific training, you know, and this goes back to investing in yourself. Now, this is something that I think everyone should do, whether they're gainfully employed or not, because you never know when that job is going to be up. You know, we're now in an economy where these jobs that people work 20, 30, 40 years are non-existent. People are moving, you know, more and more each decade. You know, like I said, I'm very surprised to come across a resume where I can see someone's been in position for more than 10 years. More and more I'm starting to see resumes where 3 years there, 4 years there, 5 years there, and nothing's wrong with that. But I'm also seeing that more people are moving and transitioning, not only to, you know, get compensated, you know, because more likely the pay is different when you move companies versus, you know, getting that 3 or 5% pay scale and pay increase internally, but also the skill level is changing. Things that were required for a job in 2014, that same position, those skill sets weren't required a decade ago. So you need to be able to have your skill set to be relevant today. So that's always going to be required for some type of industry specific training. So if you're looking to make a career move, you definitely want to look within your network. Want to look at entry-level positions. You also want to associate yourself with that industry-level associations or organization, which means that you're going to have to go out there, start reaching out to the experts in the industry, finding out the who's who, and being a part of that network. You know, you definitely want to look at the training that's out there. Not all training costs. There's different type of programs that you can look online that are free or very minimal, that you can at least get exposure to the industry if that's what you're looking to do. But at the end of the day, you definitely want to make that investment to make yourself competitive. Next thing we're going to look at is expect turbulence. Takeoff and landing are critical. These are the things that you're going to have to take in consideration that may be out of your control. And the reason why I'm going to touch on this, because a question was actually tailored towards, you know, things that may go wrong or things that you may not consider when you're looking for a job search. That is, are there other factors that come into play in hiring someone besides having a solution-oriented resume in addition to acing the interview, assuming that you follow up afterwards? So basically they're asking, let's say that if your resume does lead to an interview in which you pass all the steps with success, what are the chances of getting hired? Are your chances huge compared to everyone else? So first of all, when I say expect turbulence, again, when you take off in a plane, the first thing they do is ask you to fasten your safety belt, and the reason is because you're going to hit different types of wind shifts, different types of wind currents that are out there, the plane, air, it's different things that the pilot has no control of when they're taking you to that other elevation. That's the same thing with your career. You're going to have to be focused on the volume. There's going to be the sheer volume of candidates are going to be something that also is going to be against you. And I'm going to go ahead and set this all up so I can talk about them thoroughly. You have no control over how many people apply, and not only how many people apply, even when you're past the application part, you've done through the interview process, more likely when you've actually made it to the interview process, they're still down from anywhere from 3 to 4 candidates. Sometimes it may be more. Usually it's within the 3 to 4 range. So they're still comparing you with 2 or 3 other people. So you still have that volume that you have to actually compete against. The timing is another issue as well. When you apply to these positions online, and I've get questions before, I applied to a position online, I don't hear a reply back, I go back online and that position's there. 2 months later, that same position's posted again. And that also boils down to timing. Sometimes employers may post positions for opportunities they have, in the future, and they're actually looking for candidates they may hire, third, fourth quarter. So they're already getting their pool of candidates together. So you may see that position out there, multiple times. It may not hear anything back. So sometimes it does boil down to timing. Your biggest turbulence, I think, or biggest obstacle that you're going to have is competition. The people that you're going to be competing against. Again, this is somewhat in your control, but then again, it's out of your control, because then you're going to also have to look at the culture fit, personality, how that person interviewed, whether or not the person already knew the interviewer or already had people internally that referred them. And people don't consider this. You may be up against someone that, a friend made a referral and everyone in the organization already likes them and they're just going through the motions. It happens. So this is things that pretty much are out of your control. The next one is the ATS. This is something that I actually talked about our last workshop or 2 workshops ago. You actually can check again on our YouTube channel to check that one out. It's about having an ATS resume format, and it was actually showing you how to put together a resume that would be compatible for the applicant tracking systems that are out there. And that was a great workshop. I got good feedback on that, because many people, they put out their resume and they really don't understand that HR, recruiters, human resource managers aren't looking at that. More likely, if you're applying to a huge company, a Fortune 1000 or a Fortune 500 company, it's more likely going through an applicant tracking system. They're not going to have someone that's going to manually look at every single resume that comes through that. They're going to have some type of parsing software that's going to scan your resume for keywords. And guess where those keywords are coming from? They're coming directly from that job description. They're coming directly from that part of that job description that's looking for requirements, or they're asking for, preferably they'll like to have a particular skill set. And they're not only looking for words, they're also looking for phrases. So you want to make sure that you're taking those words, you're actually using this some type of way and putting this in your resume. I know that for an ATS tailored resume, I actually put in the last workshop that you can actually have at the bottom of your resume a actual section for keywords. Again, an ATS resume is not the resume that you're sending. Someone says, hey, can I see your resume, or shoot your resume over to me? This is not going to be the most cosmetic, attractive resume that you're sending. That's not the point. The point of this resume is to get through that ATS system. So at the bottom, just like you do when you tag blogs or tag websites, or even when people tag articles, they put keywords in there. So when you search for it, it can hit those keywords. In an ATS tailored resume, you may want to actually put a section down there for commonly used words that are for your profession, and make sure those words that are in that job descriptions are down in that keyword section, in addition to other words that will be used to search for someone that does what you do, if that makes sense. Next one is internal factors. Internal factors can be that the job was put on hold. We now have a hiring freeze, or we no longer need this position. And how again, how amazing that may sound, or how off that may sound, when it happens. I've worked with candidates that right when they're about to make the hiring decision, they reviewed their budget, they just didn't have the money for it, so they put it off until next quarter. I've had clients that put off positions for a whole year, and they had the candidate holding the bag. It happens. So those are factors, again, that you can't control. And the reason why I put the slide together with the rain is because, of course, when you fly, what can't you control? You can't control the weather. And this is some of the things that you're going to have to weather when you actually search for a job and you're being considered for one after the interview phase. And the primary one is your competition. And I actually speak about this on previous workshops as well. It's not hard to find out who's competing with you, or at least finding out who is going to be as competitive as you. And how you do that is actually looking at the company. You can use LinkedIn or any other search engine or database source that you use. Look for the company. LinkedIn would be your best bet. If you're applying to a particular role in the company, and more likely that company already employs that type of person, you can actually look up in the company the employees that currently work there with that job title, and you can review their background. You can look at the credentials they hold, their certifications they hold, the schools they went to, previous companies they worked for, previous titles they held. That really is going to be what employers looked at, and many employers or many employers or companies really don't shy away from their model. If they usually hire a type of person that, has this particular certification, or worked for this type of company, and that person worked out, they usually try to follow that pattern. So if you're looking at the company and you're seeing a trend among people that are holding the role that you're applying to, you want to say, hey, this is what the organization's looking for, and people that hold these credentials will more likely be competing against me for this job. Why? Because I already know for a fact that this company's hires that look like this, because they're already employed at this organization. So that's a way that you can actually take a glimpse of your competition as well. Look at people that are already working there. Next thing you want to look at is, do employers provide a learning curve for hire regardless whether they possess the skills for the job? If so, what's the time frame? The other one was talking about replicating your 3-6-9 month plan for a new job in order to demonstrate or showcase your capability to bring value to the company. And they're also asking, well, hey, if you can't meet that 3-6-9 month plan, would you be terminated? And how do employers assess your work ethic to show if you're bringing some type of return on their investment after you're hired? I want to know the time frame. What I can tell you immediately, the time frame is going to be very subjective to the employer, and usually they'll let you know. The assessments that are usually done or pre-assessments, they kind of look at, especially if you're applying to a technical job. And when I'm not even saying technical, it can be a technical, financial, any type of job that requires some type of skill set. They may ask you to take an assessment, and they just want to see where you stand with that particular skill set. And usually they're able to do this because anyone can tell you they know how to do something. Of course, in the interview, they can tell you, yeah, I know how to do this, or I've done this before. The assessment's really going to prove that you can do that. So yes, assessments can be used. Usually, if you don't pass the pre-assessment, you wouldn't even be looked at to move forward in the hiring process. So you want to make sure that if you are applying to some type of technical job or anything that requires, you know, analytical work, accounting, I know for IT, it's more than assessment. They actually ask you to write code in your interview, and that proves to them that you know how to do something. And they have you work with a senior employee to monitor you to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Far as a realistic 3-6-9 plan about not meeting up to the 3-6-9 month plan, you want to make sure you have a realistic one in place. And if you're on the line and this is the first time you're joining Career Innovations in this workshop, you may not be familiar with this 3-6-9 month plan. This question actually was asked from someone that attends my workshops religiously, so they're kind of familiar when I talk about a 3-6-9 month plan. What that is a plan that you put in place to show some type of solution that you're going to be able to provide for the employer. Normally, if you've heard of it, you've heard of the 30, 60, 90-day plan. I don't care for that one because I think it's unrealistic. There's really nothing that you can accomplish in 30 days that's going to bring the employer value, other than, getting on payroll and signing up for your benefits. You're really not going to be doing anything that groundbreaking in the first 30 to 60 days. So that's why I said a 3-6-9 month plan. And I usually tell people to take this in on their face-to-face interviews, because you want to walk away leaving the employer with something other than your resume. I think you still should bring your resume, but newsflash, they already had that. So you want to be able to leave something, once again, leave something of value, and also leave something that can potentially be a solution for the problem that they're hiring you for. And that's when the 3-6-9 month plan comes into place. You want to put in set goals, and you can actually put this together because you're going to be listening to the employer tell you, what your daily duties are, what the company is trying to accomplish, and what part the role is that you would play in that overall goal. And that way you can put a plan together to see how you individually will contribute to their overall goal for their organization or department. That's where the 3-6-9 plan comes in. You want to make it realistic. When you say you don't have immediate value using this, or you don't see if you're able to actually demonstrate this plan within the first 3 to 6, 9 months, you have to ask yourself, was your plan realistic? We're not talking about, if you're in sales or marketing, doubling their numbers in the first 3 or 6 or 9 months. How compelling that would sound on paper, to get you in the door is not realistic. So you want to make sure that you're putting together a plan that is absolutely realistic that you can live up to. This wouldn't be an issue. The next thing that they're going to look at your track record. It shouldn't be an issue if you've done it before. That's the beauty of being able to showcase what you've done for other employers, and showing that you can replicate this at their organization. So the thing that they're going to look at, even if you do put together some over the top 3-6-9 month plan, it's going to raise a red flag to say, okay, when have you done this? Where have you implemented this before? Any employer in their right mind is going to ask for proof if you do come to the table with something that's over the top. So you want to make sure that you're going to have a track record to back up, what you say you can do. These reviews that you take place to make sure you're on track really falls in line with what the organization's procedures and policies are. Some companies do quarterly, some companies do biannually, and some companies do annual reviews. These are the reviews that are done to make sure that you're on track. Most employers, they're not going to pull you aside, every 6 to 8 weeks to tell you, whether or not you're going in the right direction. This is something that's going to be done, on their timeline when you can actually sit down with your hiring authority or your direct hiring manager and HR. This can be documented in a professional way, because they want a paper trail to know that they sat down and told you what you brought to the table, what you're lacking. So this is done in a very organized way, and it can take every 3 months, or quarterly, biannually, or annually. Far as your 3-6-9 month plan, that's something that you can communicate directly to your hiring authority. If you do want feedback, nothing's wrong with speaking up, letting them know, hey, after the first 3 months, can you tell me how I'm doing? Can you tell me if I'm on the right track? There's no problem doing that. The more formal reviews are done, like I said, on that quarterly basis. But if you do want some type of feedback, and being honest with you, most employers would give you that feedback after the first 90 days. Many of them follow the 90-day probationary period anyway. So more likely you're going to hear some feedback, regardless if you want to or not, about your work performance in the first 90 days, just to give you some type of insight whether or not that you're following through on your commitments and you're following the guidelines that they put before you. So that's something that you do. The learning curve, again, that's going to be determined by the employer. Some employers want you to, hit the ground running. Some employers are happy to train. That's something that's, again, is going to be very subjective to the company. If they're looking for someone that hit the ground running, they're going to be looking at looking at your track record to see if this is something that you've done before. If it's something that you haven't done before, more likely you wouldn't make it to the hiring process. They're going to look for someone that has a background of doing something, so then that gives them insight, hey, I don't have to train this person. And if I do, it'll only have to be on our, on our software, or on something that, may be unique to our organization. But other than that, this person knows what they're doing. They've been doing it for the last 10, 15 years. Entry-level positions, and they are hiring for an entry-level position. They're well aware that they would have to do some type of training, and they're open to that. So that wouldn't even be an issue. The issue, I think, would be, and I think that the person that actually asked this question was probably more concerned of failing or not following through with their 3-6-9 month plan. And don't be discouraged or scared about that. Just make sure that your plan is very realistic and it's something that you can do. And I definitely would tailor my 3-6-9 month plan around successes and accomplishments that you've already incorporated in other organizations. That way, it's easy to prove, it's easy to validate, because you can say, hey, I did this at this organization or this company, and I'm pretty sure and I'm confident that I can do it with, this organization if given the chance. So you definitely want to make it realistic by using past experiences. Okay, moving on to our next question. Internal advancement, how to advance your career within a company. Is it more convenient to change your career goals for a job in a more, quote, in-demand industry? That's really up to you. Before you change industries, you definitely want to do your research. Make sure that the industry that you're going into is not just because you have some industries that are it's subjected to the economy. Sometimes they're hot, sometimes they're not. Hey, look at real estate. You couldn't tell anyone 10, 15 years ago, don't get in real estate. It was booming. It was booming. It was a seller's market. And then when the real estate bubble bust, everything went downhill. So it's really determines on doing your research, finding out the industry that you want to be in. And I really stress the word want to be in, because if you just change jobs because it's quote unquote in demand, you're going to find yourself changing jobs to the next hottest job that's out there. You know what I mean? And you're never going to be satisfied, because you know what? Next year is another job that's going to be in demand. In 2016, there's going to be another job that's going to be in demand. So you want to make sure that you are in a position that you want to be in. And if you are in a dying industry, and I say dying industry, I say that very lightly, because there are industries out there that, I wouldn't call them dying, but the requirements have changed. The skill set has changed, you know. So if you're in an industry where it's shifting, you might want to look at making yourself more competitive in the new industry or the new skill set that's out there. You know, so it was kind of like the writing, journalism, you know, everything, the newspaper, and then, you know, and now everything's gone online, you know, so now we have bloggers. You know, 10 years ago, we didn't have bloggers. Now bloggers is, you know, bloggers actually a job title now, you know, so social media marketers actually a job title now. We didn't have that 10 years ago, you know. Same thing, marketing, you know, now you're marketing online. Guess what changed? The skill set. You know, instead of marketing in print, what people still do, they shifted their skill set. When we see that more people online, let's still try to market this and gear this to the online audience. You know, the skill set changed. So you want to look at doing your research, making sure that you are aligning yourself not only to the industry that's in demand, but also the changing industry that you're in. Because it sounds like that you're in an industry, if you're asking about changing into a more demand industry, it sounds like you may be in an industry that that you find not as demanding. Find a mentor. I think that even with me being in Career Innovations, I still have a mentor. I still have someone in my network that I can reach out to. I don't know everything, you know. I still will never know everything. There's always more to learn, you know, and the best people to learn it from is people that done it, you know. So I always have to find a mentor to be able to help me, not only with my business, but with, you know, anything that I'm working on professionally, academically. You know, you want to make sure that you're finding a mentor. You want to know the who's who. This is within your industry or the new industry that you're trying to actually move to. You're looking for internal advancement. So if you're trying to advance within your company, you want to know the who's who. Who's the decision makers in your organization? You know, it may not be your direct hiring manager. They may just sign off or okay that you can make that internal move. They may not be the decision maker. You want to find out who's who in that organization that actually has the authority to say yes on that job. That's something that you want to do. You want to stay on the radar, which means that if you're looking to get promoted within, you want to make sure that you are doing things within your current organization to showcase your skill set, which it may mean taking on projects, working on a team, you know, taking that assignment that nobody wants. You know, you're going to have to be able to stay on the radar. You know, and the reason why you want to do that, you want to stay in front of the decision maker's mind. You want to make sure not only that your direct hiring manager take note, but you also want to make sure that your surrounding coworkers and peers also see that you're a team maker, you're a team member, and you're contributing to the overall mission or vision of the project. So you definitely want to make sure that you're doing that. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you invest in yourself. Because if you're looking to make an internal move, whether this is a role that they're only hiring internally, they may also be looking at candidates externally. You know, they may be opening it up to the public. You want to make sure that you're competitive, because who knows a person that doesn't work for your organization may apply to that position and be more competitive and actually get it. You know, so you want to make sure that you're investing in yourself. And the beauty is that if you're gainfully employed, which means if you're making an internal advancement, that you are gainfully employed, you have the resources to do so. You know, you actually have the resources. I don't know if your organization contributes to tuition reimbursements or reimbursement for certifications, or I call it CEUs, continual education units, or anything. You should be taking advantage of your tuition or educational programs if your employer supplies them. You know, you should be investing in yourself, because I see that's the number one thing that people can't do when they find themselves out of work. You know, and I tell people to sharpen their axe, and they're like, well, you know, I don't have the money to do it, or, you know, I'm on unemployment. And you work for organizations for 10 years, and you're telling me you never took a class that they said they would pay for? So you really definitely want to make the investment in yourself. I see this all the time. I see people that work for organizations 5, 10 years, and these are big companies. We're not talking about mom and pops garages. We're talking about Fortune 500 companies that I know have education reimbursement programs, and they never take advantage of them. And the people that are applying to this position, they got the most current certifications, the most current skill set. They know the software, why it was in beta. So they just never took advantage of it because I call it, they got comfortable. They didn't get out their comfort zone. When they decide to get out of it, they start, it's kind of like you have that, you get in survival mode. And now they look at, investing in yourself in education more of a luxury, and it's actually in this economy a requirement. It's a requirement to be able to make those internal moves and make those moves ahead. So you definitely want to consider that. Next one was at a career fair, what do recruiters do with the 100 of resumes they receive? Do they look at them at all, call people back based on the interview? What do recruiters do with them? I guess, this person asked because it seems like they reached out to a recruiter, they didn't get a call back. They want to know what they do with the resumes. Career fair planning. Are you planning ahead? And I look at this as a career, as a road trip or a plane trip. That's what the theme is. You see your passport, your ticket, your luggage, and it's the same thing when you're planning a trip or you're planning a flight. And I'm going to San Francisco in October, and I've already got my ticket. Many people don't plan ahead. And when you're going to a career fair, you should already know who you're going to talk to. In fact, you should have already spoken to them. You should already have got a hold of them either through some type of communication, either on the phone, either via email. You have to know your game plan. If it's possible, know the location, which nowadays most job fairs or career fairs let you know where they're going to be located, let you know the setup. They even let you know the booth numbers of these employers. Hey, Johnson & Johnson is going to be at booth 187. Keep in mind, some companies are planning for these events months in ahead. These companies have budgets for career fairs. They already know who's going to man the booth. And the people that are flying to these career fairs to man the booth already have their tickets in hand. You should find out who's going to be manning the booth, which is usually a recruiter. They normally don't have like the director of anything. No executives are usually out there. It's usually the recruiter, which is fine. You should be connecting before the event. What I mean by that, not connecting far as, I connected with them on LinkedIn, so did the other 200 attendees, in some cases 2,000 attendees that are going to be there. More and more career fairs are posting more specific information when they advertise for career fairs. I actually know in different organizations that I'm a part of, and that's why I stress that you should be a part of industry-related associations. If you're in marketing, you should be a part of the American Marketing Association. I'm in HR, I'm a part of SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. You should be a part of industry-related associations that are niched for your type of work and your type of career set. Why? Because they have their own job fairs. They have their own. You shouldn't be looking at the ones that are open to the public where you just have random everything in the kitchen sink there. You should be going to career fairs that are dedicated strictly to your profession. And the reason why I say that, because when you do, most of them are so organized that you can actually set up times with the booths ahead of time. I went to a career fair. Well, I was actually a part of a career fair. I wasn't actually a person that was doing the interviews, but you can actually, after you register for the career fair, you can go in and register for a time. Pick a time slot, because they had two people manning the booth. One person that stood there, like this question was tailored to, they just collected resumes all day, and they actually had another person that manned the booth that actually met with people that set up appointments beforehand. I mean, this stuff is getting technical now. This isn't just walk-in free-for-all career fairs anymore. So they actually had a way that after you register, you could actually confirm a time with that recruiter. So you want to make sure that you're having time set up. Okay, what if you're at a career fair and it hasn't got that high tech yet? You should still be reaching out to the company saying, hey, I know that, and this is a great way to put yourself out there, great way to show that you're attentive to what that company's doing. Hey, I know that you guys are participating in the career fair in November. Wanted to get a jump start on it, and I looked at the positions online. Do you know how actually to be at the career fair? They already know. Because why? That booth number that you read online was already paid for a year in advance or 6 months in advance. So they already know who's manning the booth. Find out who it is. Attempt to set up a time to talk to that person. It may be crazy at the career fair that they can't talk to you, but at least try to talk to them. Hey, I know that you're going to be manning the booth. I'd like to send you my resume ahead of time. That way you have a point of contact. You already got your resume in that person's hand, that recruiter's hand. Next thing, you want to make sure that you apply online or get in, and that's why I said get that resume in the recruiter's hand. Don't rely, and like this young lady asked in this question, what do they do with the 100 of resumes? Be honest, I don't know. I'm pretty sure they have a pal. I've seen some actually have a pal. I usually don't get that many because most of my positions are so niched out. But I've actually seen pals where they have a pal of mediocre, and they have a pal of not going to call back. And most of the time, the people that they are going to call back, they already either got it in advance or they already got a time booked to talk with them. So to be honest with you, they probably either get fouled or thrown away. And the foul may be a throwaway compartment, so if it's not something that they're looking for, because I can't see organizations just collecting resumes to collect them unless they're in electronic format where they can store them. I don't see someone lugging home hundreds of resumes on the plane if they're not going to reach out to them. So most of the time they will keep the resumes that they do intend to engage, but for the most part, they're going to garbage. So you want to make sure that you are setting up a time to talk and you're applying online. Another thing that I see a lot of people do, they try to go to every single booth that's there. It's quality versus quantity. It's not a race. You're not there to see every single person that registered for the career fair or for the job fair. Make sure you're spending your time wisely. Visiting every single booth can be very, very time consuming. On top of that, it's very unproductive. You should be sticking to your plan, which when I mean your plan, you should have a blueprint of where the companies are that you want to interview with. You should have their booths already numbered so you know exactly how to get there in a time efficient way. You should not be trying to visit every single booth that's there, because many of the booths that's there are not hiring for what your skill set's in. You're wasting your time. Unless after you finish with your interviews and you finish meeting the companies that you want to meet, then you can go back and, like you say, network and shake hands and talk and collect business cards. But you want to make sure that you're sticking to the plan and you're actually meeting the parties that you scheduled to see. So that's why I have the quality versus quantity. The last step that many people fail to do is follow up. And I can tell you, when I used to do career fairs on the job seeker end, because I used to be unemployed too. I know how it is to go out there for jobs. I actually used to keep follow-up cards or thank you cards, blank thank you cards. You can go to CVS, Walgreens, wherever, and buy them $3 or $4 for a pack of 20 or 30 cards. You probably can go to the dollar store and get them cheaper than that. So I would get a box of blank cards and I would leave them in my car before I went to the job fair. And as I went to the job fair, I would have a little notepad, usually sticky notes or whatnot, and I wouldn't do this in front of them, but after we had a conversation or anything and I interviewed, or I would remember what they said, I only had to remember it for a couple seconds, I'd take out my sticky note I will write down the company, who I spoke with. Usually they gave me a business card, so I would have their business card. Believe it or not, you have companies that run out of business cards. That's why I bring sticky notes or index cards with me, because I've been to many fairs where, oh, I'm all out. I gave them all out. They don't have any business cards. So I would say, oh, don't worry about it, and I actually pull out my index card or my sticky note and write down their information. And what I do with that, it would be a note to myself, because I would do that with each booth that I would meet up with. They had their own little sticky note. And mind you, it takes every bit of 10 seconds to write down their name, and I write briefly what we spoke about. Maybe a sentence or two, if that. Something that would jog my memory if I saw it. Put it on the sticky notes, and at the end of the career fair, I would go to my car and sit in my car, and I would fill out the blank thank you notes with the person's name, information, you know, because usually their address and name and stuff is on their business card if they had one. And normally, if they didn't have a business card, I would take a pamphlet or take something from the table that had their address on it. It's usually a pamphlet or brochure. Have their address. That brief note, sentence or two that I told you I jot down, I make sure that I customize it by reiterating something that stood out about our conversation. That's why I took about one or two sentences down that stood out about what we talked about. I would have those in the mail before I got home, because I would already have the blank cards, the envelopes, and stamps in the car. So before I drove home, I already would have my thank you notes in the mail to everyone that I spoke to at the career fair. You know, so these are tidbits that I used to do that worked. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, I had so many, even the people I didn't get the job from. I just got so many. I can't believe you send me a thank you card. Because people don't send them anymore. What do they send? Emails. A thank you email. They don't send cards anymore. And I've got thank you, you know, I had someone that called me, didn't get the job, but just called me just to say, hey, I got your card. You know, that was real thoughtful. You know, so you definitely want to do that. So you want to follow up, and many people don't do that. I call it the 3-strike rule. 3 forms of communication: written communication, which I did in the form of a card; technical communication, which you can do in the form of an email; and verbal communication, which you do in a phone call. You know, 3 forms of communication. So after I send those thank you notes, if I didn't hear anything back, I will reiterate with a follow-up email. If I still didn't hear anything back, I will reiterate by picking up the phone and calling them. So they heard from me 3 different ways in 3 forms of communication. So that's how I followed up with each person. I kept a spreadsheet for that as well. So hopefully this helped you out with the career fair. So and that answers your question about the resume. This shouldn't be an issue when you do go to career fairs. That you should have a game plan in place. And most of the time, when you have a game plan in place, if you don't get a position, you definitely have gained a connection. You know, so that's something that you want to do, because a lot of people aren't doing this, and you're going to come across as someone that's going to stand out to them. And I definitely stand it out just by sending a card alone. Yeah, I couldn't believe how the card blew so many employers away. No, because there's something that they don't get. So this is my contact information. We're at the top of the hour. At the end of this workshop, there is I think, 8 to 10 question survey I like everyone to take. Just ask about how the workshop was, how to better or best, any questions that you'd like to cover in the future. Again, these were the questions I got in advance. I know there may be questions at the end of this session. If you want to stay on the line, I can answer them. I don't see any hands raised. I'm actually opening this up so I can see it. But if you do have questions, I'll stay on the line to answer them. I don't see anyone with their hand raised or typing a question below. Those were all the questions I received. Like I said, I did receive about 8 or 9 questions. Someone sent me about 8 or 9 questions about 15 minutes before the workshop. I would take those questions. If you're on the line, tune in on the 8th. I will answer those questions. I would definitely put that in the next workshop. It was just no time to cover that much material in the 15 minutes that you sent them to me. So make sure that you send them to me. I like them to have at least a day in advance so I can incorporate them in the slides. So I don't see any hands or any questions below. I hope I was able to answer everyone's questions. It's 8 o'clock. Please take the survey, and hopefully I'll see you next week, next Monday, on the 8th from 7 to 8 p.m. Thank you so much. Have a great night.